Good evening, guys. Welcome back to my channel. This is Coach DC from All 22 Films. I'm really flattered and proud to be joined by Jason from Huddle It Up Films and Jake, Judge Baltimore on Twitter, and then who obviously did a lot of work with me and others on the Draft Signal website this year. I want to thank you guys, first of all. What we're going to do here is talk about the offseason, but also how things look heading into minicamp. So, Jason, first, I'll start with you. Appreciate you joining in. How are things going, man?
Things are going pretty well. Pretty well. I'm looking forward to the minicamp and not looking forward to post minicamp. So want to see all the reports, who's doing well, the highlight footage, just get that little bit of adrenaline going and the endorphins going, a positive energy before I start, worrying about the season and that dead period.
Yeah, and they haven't, and like you said, when we talked pre-show, they haven't announced the training camp dates or times yet, right? So we're not just we know we have a dead period coming up, but we don't know when exactly that is going to end. Is that what you were kind of getting at earlier?
That's right. So usually it's July something teenth. The rookies come in, and then the vets come in after that.
Well, Jake, same for you. How's things going? But I also appreciate you joining in. I like recording on Sunday evenings. I don't know if it's convenient for you or both of you guys, but it is for me. Having young children in the house, being able to get to the office and get something done. So, how's things going, and how much are you looking forward to the mandatory minicamp, right? The first one.
Yep. Yeah, things are going well. Staying busy. Super fired up about the season. I was super excited watching all the clips from the OTAs and the camps earlier last month. So just super fun watching our guys out there again. Just almost feel it's a refreshing time for us. Lots of excitement. It's good to see Lamar out there with everybody too. So really fired up and looking forward to these next couple of weeks and months before the season.
I think that kind of leads into the first thing I wanted to ask you guys, and I'll have input as well. But I think players in talking to the media have kind of led on that they're excited. The impression I get from players is that they're enjoying the way things are being operated and administered. Let's put it that way. Do you guys have any opinions or thoughts on that globally, and or impressions of Minter, Weaver, Doyle, just from the limited amount that we've seen so far?
Yeah, I'll just speak on the players. I think that this is the kind of thing that I'm really hesitant to buy into. Players tend to say the right things. You hear players speak, but there have been a lot of context clues. Even going up to the Mike Green interview we had with the lounge, of players just being renewed, refreshed. Lamar looked like rookie Lamar, sounded like MVP Lamar, and I want people to remember that this isn't always the case after a coaching change. And I brought up Jonathan Ogden retiring in 2008 after Harbaugh was hired because new coaching staff. I was comfortable under Brian Billick. My turf toe has been bugging me for years. I don't want to go through a regime change. I'm just going to retire. There's a lot of disappointment last year. There could be players that are uptight, players that don't know where they stand, players who were Harbaugh fans and didn't agree with the change. So I don't want people to just automatically think that this positive energy from everywhere, and it seems like genuine positive energy to me, is a given. It could very well be very business-like in that building, and everything we've seen is just been an exciting tone from the players, not just what they're saying, how they're saying it, and how specific they're getting with the new younger coaching staff. I think that we should be happy if they like the way we feel as fans, rejuvenated. It seems like the players genuinely feel the same.
I would agree. We need to look no further than the Cleveland Browns, who apparently Myles Garrett and Todd Monken had not met after Monken was named head coach, with the whole Schwartz-Monken issue, inability to keep Schwartz around after hiring Monken. So I agree. Great point. Jake, how about you? Are there any guys, Weaver and Minter were here before. Mm-hmm. Are there any of the coaches, just in a small bit that you've seen, that leave you with a first impression? And then how much do you buy into the total or the aggregate of what players have put out there thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of Anthony Weaver. He commands the room when he speaks. He's just really entertaining, really fun guy, very energetic. I think having him alongside Minter, I think we're gonna talk about this a little later, but that duo is going to really help this defense kind of get their feet under them early and get them rolling quickly. And then Doyle, he's smart. I forget who was talking about it. It might have been 105.7, but he has that like quick speaking Sean Payton, Sean McVay type, talk to him. But he's sharp. He seems to be connecting with the guys well on the field. And I think in terms of the players, they just seem there's not a lot of drama right now. They seem locked in, excited, but they're focused, which is great to see. So, yeah, just a lot of excitement from the staff, and then obviously the commitment from the players is really good thing to see early on.
Yeah, think about it from an expectation standpoint, what everybody was feeling last year.
Mm-hmm.
And this team could easily, Jake, be burdened by expectations. Be like, look, man, the standard here is really high. It's Super Bowl or bust. And here we are. And it just doesn't feel like it. Feels very loose, like a very loose house in baseball.
Which is something that we haven't really felt in years past, because it seemed like everybody was so tight. It was Super Bowl or bust or whatever. This offseason, I know, and like to your point, it is early still, and everybody's happy about their team and has sky high expectations, but it seems loose right now. Everybody's getting off on the right foot with each other, but yeah,
looks like it. As far as Weaver goes, I wanted to respond to one thing. Is this thought popped up literally when you mentioned him. Weaver at the high school level or even youth football level, in my experience, sometimes the head coach could miss practice, and someone there is capable enough, strong enough, smart enough to be able to react to whatever, right? A storm. You got to make a decision. Are we going to continue practice, or are we going to cut this thing, right? How close are we to the end of practice, whether we should cut it or not? An injury, God forbid, something like that. Weaver is, like, to me, a guy that if Minter had to go do a some media thing with the NFL or a 45-minute session with a reporter during practice for whatever reason, like, things would be fine. You could leave, and you've got a guy there who could handle whatever pops up. And I can only speak from personal experience. I've actually been that guy before, where the head coach says, "Hey, man, this week when you do defense, I'm going to leave because I've got this other thing going on," whatever that was. And the first time that happened, it was like, whoa. So, I mean, I'll be the guy finishing up practice. I'll be the guy, doing things, that handling, issues if it pops up. The converse, or the opposite of that, is the head coach feels totally locked in. I guess what I'm getting at is, it looks to me like we've got, for lack of a better word, a 1A and a 1B as far as the hierarchy goes. And I don't mean quality or how they could react. I mean that they're both capable of being head coaches. And in fact, if we're honest, Anthony Weaver's probably going to be a head coach in a year or two if things work out the way we want it to, right?
I mean, he should be. He should be. I feel like the most optimistic part for me about this team is how the defense is going to work together. And a lot of that has to do with, obviously, Minter's scheme, but also the lack of ego and the want to of Anthony Weaver to be here. A situation like you described, Coach, where you had been that guy. What if you thought you should have been the head coach of that team? What if you had your side agendas that you wanted to get across? Well, then you're not a very good person to be that point man. With Anthony Weaver, I see nothing but, look, I'll get my chance eventually. It's prestigious. I'm in a prestigious position to be the defensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. We've heard him say things like that. That isn't me saying that. That's him. He's ultra happy to be here. He's ultra sure of himself, ultra confident in his role. He's not a selfish guy. He wants to hold the standard well. So I think that it works well from not only Minter's communication to Weaver as to what Jesse Minter wants to be said in those defensive meeting rooms when Jesse Minter can't be there, but also the broader stuff that you're talking about there, Coach, to where there's not a lack of, there's no alternative or ulterior motive. Weaver, if we were going to have a defensive coordinator as a coach, it's like the perfect mix between veteran coach and a selfless person to be that. Because if it would have been a young defensive coordinator who's never, been in a meeting room before, maybe you have some questions as to how Jesse Minter's philosophy is getting to the players in those meetings. But if it's a veteran coach who maybe like think that Jim Schwartz with the Browns that you brought up, maybe there'd be some tension there. And this is the way we really should be doing things. I'm gonna slide a little bit of this in here, even though, it might not be what Jesse thinks. So I just think the personality match above everything else was so important, and they really nailed that. And for Anthony Weaver to go from a position in which he was calling plays to one where he's not calling the defensive plays tells you all you need to know, that he just wanted to be here.
Yeah. It kind of, to be honest with you, as far as Weaver goes, I'm sure that it started from an honest standpoint. Step one had to be honesty between Minter and Weaver about what Minter was going to expect, but also about what Minter could expect. I am 100% sure that Weaver's, if they had the conversation, said, I will want to be a head coach, and so I'll be looking at head coach opportunities the first chance I get. And he need look no further than obviously the guy who he was working under in 2023 when he was here, and that's Mike McDonald, 2 years as the DC in Baltimore. So, I look forward to Weaver getting those opportunities, and hope that, I say we as a Ravens fan, hope that we as the organization and the team can put him in the position to capitalize on that, because I think he's probably ready now. And usually those things, Minter, Doyle being a super young offensive coordinator, oftentimes people say that you get those opportunities before you're ready, and you have to, learn to be ready on the job. So I do have one more observation about Doyle, but I wanted to talk about the offensive line. Doyle reminds me of Ben Johnson, and I've continued to say that in film study videos that I've put out there, because I see a level of confidence in the way that he talks, and I think that's kind of what you guys were getting at. Zay Flowers was talking about, design, preparedness. I don't know that he used those words necessarily, but that seemed to be what he was getting at. I'm extremely excited to see what Doyle can do with, and I think Smythe came out and said it. Was it the lounge where he basically said he's installing the same system we had in Chicago?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he said he wanted to be multiple, to lean on the principles that he has, but it's a multiple. He's going to play to our scheme. He's going to play to the personnel, alter his scheme to the personnel.
Hope we get more of the Ben Johnson influence than the Sean Payton, just to be honest with you, because I've spent, and that's a bias of mine, probably because I've spent the last 3 years watching Ben Johnson offenses. I watched the least amount of Ben Johnson film this past year with the Chicago Bears, obviously, but the previous 2.5 or 3, 22, 23, 24, I enjoyed thoroughly trying to mentally catch up with his concepts. And I think that Doyle probably, and when I say mentally catch up, I mean understand them personally, and then be able to convey them in film study form, because I thought they were so intricate and so well designed. And I think Doyle, being exposed to that, super intelligent guy, to me looks like someone who's going to hit the ground running, especially with our early season schedule. Having said that, he needs an offensive line to be high quality to do so. So where are you guys with the offensive line right now with what we have from a depth standpoint, and then where they are positionally? I'm going to throw the depth chart up here on the film, or on the screen. And I'm not too sure about Ioane and Voorhees, and then Simpson and Jones. Vincent confirmed going to right tackle. Is that confirmed?
No, this is probably the worst job of doing a depth chart that I've seen, because Simpson's going to be at left guard. Venga's going to be at right guard. Corey Bullock is probably not in the conversation for starting center.
I don't think he's in the conversation at center at all, based on what Ledford's been saying.
And Cordell.
This is
Cordell
ESPN.
Cordell.
This is ESPN for you.
And I pronounce his name, but Lichtenhahn looked like a heavy-footed right tackle to me when I saw him on the field last year in the preseason. So I think this is kind of like just reversed.
Where are you guys with what we have at offensive line? and level of concern with the center position? I know we'll touch on that maybe a little bit later, but where are you guys with that?
The more I've watched Danny Pinter, and there's only a handful of games that he's played, but he seems to fit the mold for what a Ben Johnson type of offense looks for in a center. The athlete guy can move around the field a little bit. But obviously you are looking for upgrades if you can find one. And I think Jeff Zrebiec, he doesn't have any inside information on this or whatever, but he keeps saying that he thinks that the starting center for the Baltimore Ravens is currently not on the roster. And I tend to agree with it too. That's an option. That'll be interesting to see down the line. Like when we're getting close to, trimming the roster down to 53. I think Jason, on your show a couple of weeks ago, I threw the question out there about the corner battle. I wonder if they could potentially, dip into their surplus of corners and make a trade for a center. But other than that, the questions are, Stanley, is he going to stay healthy? And if he goes down, did Vincent improve year to year to where you're comfortable with him, potentially starting 3-4 games this year? Is Roger Rosengarten going to turn it around because he had that regression last year? And then obviously, Ioane and Simpson, are they going to be able to come in and be productive, and for Simpson, not get penalized as much as he typically does? So, but in terms of, where we were last year to where we are now, significant improvement.
It's ironic, Coach, because you have a downgrade at center, the highest paid center in the league by a long shot, to not knowing who the center is even going to be. And I tend to agree with Jake or Jeff Zrebiec, maybe, that the starting center isn't on the roster because DaCosta pretty much said so. Work in progress. I forget the exact words he said in the press conference, but he lamented not being able to address that in the draft. And so but you look at left tackle last year, Carson Vincent, when he got in the preseason, let's just compare it to a year ago in June. I had no idea what Carson Vincent would look like. We got a pretty good idea of what he looked like in the preseason, played a ton of snaps, and then he worked himself to be elevated above Joseph Noteboom during the season, which Noteboom didn't play well at all, so it's not saying much. Right. But it does, especially for a coach like John Harbaugh, to elevate, coming from Alabama A&M, to have him be, one snap away from entering the game at left tackle does tell me something. And then the depth at guard, I think, is better. The high end of is better. I mean, Emory Jones Jr. could very well be I thought he was, probably the best guard on last year's team. He might be better than Roger Rosengarten 4 weeks in at right tackle. Voorhees, up and down year. Just depends what kind of week you catch him on. But yeah, I feel better about our left tackle depth. I feel better about our right tackle depth. I feel better about our guard depth. So last point here, kind of on a tangent, coaching matters so much to this. I want to go back to 2021, the Alejandro Villanueva year. Lamar gets hurt. We had Tyree Phillips at right tackle. And when Lamar was injured, he led the NFL in air yards per attempt. So he was chucking that thing downfield further, more often than any other quarterback in the NFL.
With a poor offensive line.
Yeah. With tackles they couldn't protect.
Yeah.
And you look at what the Rams do every year. It's like, yeah, their offensive line kind of looks like it sucks. Yeah, they're starting 5th round pick here, 7th round pick here, undrafted guy here. Their offense is always productive. So I think that the offensive coordinator has a lot to do with that. And we'll see. We'll be able to see Declan Doyle use his experience in those West Coast type style offenses to protect Lamar.
An observation about the center position specific to, I'm going to say Doyle is part and parcel to a Ben Johnson scheme until we see that he's not. So if people, not necessarily you guys, but if people listening or watching my content don't like me referring to a Ben Johnson scheme, when I'm proven that it's different from a Ben Johnson scheme, then I'll stop referring to it as so. In Chicago, signed a veteran center 15 months ago, something like that, during free agency period. Talking about Ben Johnson's first year. Of course, that guy's since retired. Had Frank Ragnow as good as it gets in Detroit. To my knowledge, what I think I know, the center controls the pass pro stuff, very similar to the differences between some of the Shanahan schemes. I can't remember exactly who the quarterback was. He's a film study guy now. He was a career backup, third string type guy on Twitter, but he does a nice job of talking about the differences between Shanahan schemes. His name will come to me in a moment. He played with the Niners, the Packers, and I think the Rams. So he was around all of those guys. And he talked about, yes, Ben Kurt. I think very highly of him. I think he does a great job.
Really smart guy.
He had a post a couple of years ago talking about the differences between some of the Shanahan schemes, meaning in this scheme, I think it was the 49ers, the quarterback controls the run game, but not the pass pro as far as checks and some of the directional calls. Like let's say the coach calls outside zone. Well, it's a quarterback's job, and if I'm remembering this correctly, to decide whether we're going to run outside zone to the right or run it to the left, depending on the front that we're seeing. But it's not the quarterback's job in that system to control the pass pro. It's the center's job versus the Packers system, which I think was the opposite. And if I'm misremembering the way Benkert explains it, my apologies for that. I'll try to find the link to the tweet. It's from a couple of years ago. Essentially what I'm getting at, I believe that Ben Johnson's scheme relies more on the center. So to me, not having a center who we can right now say is the starter is able to physically execute the job and mentally handle those types of duties, that's a big deal to me right now. And I agree with you. I don't think it's Corey Bullock. I did a film study of him maybe 6 weeks ago, and I watched the 2 preseason games. Yeah, there's some stuff to like, but there's a lot that I'm like, I just can't see the athletic deficit being closed on in the last year plus. So I would agree with you guys. But as far as Ledford goes, I think we got the right guy. I watched a little bit of 2 of the drills, and he was very clear and direct about, I'm not just telling you what to do, but I've already told you. I think he said something like, I'm always going to tell you why. And it seemed to me there was an underlying, something not said there, as if he had already explained why in a meeting earlier that day. And what I thought I heard was someone saying, I've told you this already. Now here we are addressing it a second time. The third time is going to be different. And I'm sure that Ledford knew the cameras were on him and he would probably handle it differently. Basically, I thought I heard a guy saying, this is your first or second time I'm telling you this, and I need you to listen better. We need bad guys on this coaching staff, 100%. And I think Doyle is one in the Ben Johnson mold. My little observation on Ledford, I felt like I saw a bad guy who would not sit up there and lie to us in week 6. That guy over there is doing a good job, and we can plainly see he is not. So my level of concern with the offensive line from a personnel standpoint, center, is pretty high. My level of concern, little snippet that I saw for Ledford, I don't think he's going to lie to us like George Warhop did.
He's kind of he's similar to Weaver in the sense that they're big personalities who can command a room, confident, and like you were saying, it kind of ties into what Minter and Doyle, all those guys have kind of been preaching, is at least what I've noticed early on is the emphasis on discipline, sticking to your role, doing your job, executing well, no penalties. There's been some false starts here and there, issues so far in the practices, but I think making that an emphasis this offseason is definitely huge especially for a new staff in general, and new players coming in. But yeah, they definitely have the personalities that you'd like to see in coaches. And that'll be one thing that I'll keep an eye on this preseason and then early on into the year to see how those guys react and how they grow, how they take to his teaching. So he's a really, look what he did in Atlanta. A lot of those guys that they were like homegrown talents that ended up being quality starters or got big contracts elsewhere. So obviously there's some proof there as to how good of a teacher he can be. And I'm excited to see how he fares here.
Yeah. On Ledford, I've got nothing but just really positive impressions and kind of high, maybe even unrealistic expectations for how he could level us up on an offensive line that just declined under Warhop. It kind of stayed okay right after Joe D passed away, but kind of just slowly declined. And, year 2 of Warhop was kind of was a disaster by many standards. But I think the first thing that stood out to me is that he was hired before Declan Doyle. So we identified Dwayne Ledford as something that this organization desperately needed, and that was a coach with a reputation as one of the best. Was able to bring him in, and then the second thing was he knows what he wants. Like the John Simpson signing kind of surprised people. They're like, wait a minute, it doesn't seem to fit. Where does this go? Outside zone isn't his thing. Well, obviously Dwayne Ledford saw something that he wanted in John Simpson. The Corey Bullock situation, again, I mentioned that JT from my show asked Cordell, well, what about Corey Bullock? And remember, because if you remember, one of the coaches was asked, and they said, well, we got 3 guys we're taking a look at. And, it was speculated that Corey Bullock was one of those 3s. And, Jeff Zrebeck, Cordell, said back to him, I don't think he's one of the 3. And those guys are out there watching practice. That's about as much as they could say. So Ledford looked at Corey Bullock, was like, nope, we're bringing in Danny Pinter to be our backup. I don't even want Bullock in the conversation as fighting for a backup. He's not a fit. John Simpson's a fit. Danny Pinter's a fit. Corey Bullock is not a fit. Victor Vega Ioane, obvious fit. So Ledford knows what he wants, and it goes back to like what makes me think of this coach is what you said about he's not going to be lying to himself come week 6 if somebody's not getting the job done. He's not doing lying to us, lying to himself, lying to the team. He knows what he wants. He's looking for it, and that's going to be his standard.
Felt like, you guys can adjust this or shift it if you want. I felt like when we saw John Harbaugh ask questions about the offensive line, and then when we saw George Warhop get up there, I think it was week 6, but I could be wrong. Maybe it was later in the season. I just felt like even facial expression and the first 2 words out of their mouth, you knew that they were dreading the next 6 minutes or the next 7 minutes because maybe they couldn't tell us the truth. Maybe they, didn't want to for whatever reason. I like guys that aren't afraid to burn things up. I'll be straightforward with you. I like guys who aren't afraid to say, hey, this is not good enough right now. What that guy's doing at left guard or that guy's doing at center, it's not good enough. That we got some things to fix right now. He's working on them, and I'm trying to help him recognize how to handle it quicker. But the last 3, 4, 5 weeks have not been good enough, period. And what Harbaugh and Warhop did was it was almost dereliction of duty the way they lied to us. Because and somebody said it in a Twitter post or reaction. They said maybe the Ravens are generating income off of all these replies on their Twitter post because, it was like 800 replies in a row that were like, can you believe he said that? So just little impression of Ledford and Doyle, which is where I'm going next. I don't think those guys are going to lie to anyone, and I don't think they're worried, even though Doyle's younger, obviously doesn't have the playing background of some of these guys, not even close. But Doyle looks supremely confident to me, and I think him and Ledford are a fit as far as what this team needs. When I say we need bad guys, I think we need guys that are going to be direct and honest and forthright and say we're either at the standard, above it, or we're not good enough right now. To fans to the media and to the players as well. Doyle, to me, looks like a guy who's not scared of his role at all. He looks ready to go. And I think the schedule favors him early. Those first 5 weeks, I think, really favors him to come out of the gates offensively for people to not necessarily know what he's running and when he's doing so, when he's running.
I think one term that I've kind of noticed, or one term that I think of when I watch these clips early on, is just transparency. Like whether the coaches are talking to the media, whether they're talking to the players, they're transparent with their expectations, what they want to see, how they want to execute things. And you've seen it so far in these short clips with Doyle and Ledford, staff in general, but they're very clear and at expressing what they want, to the media as well, how they envision this offense, what they want to see, what they want to try and limit and all that stuff. So that's one big thing that I've noticed early on. I don't know if you guys have picked up on that as well. But
Yeah, no, very detail oriented and consistent. And, I don't know. I think the clips I've seen of Doyle, I am not where coach is as far as this is going to be a Ben Johnson type offense. I don't know. I'm not as confident as that. I think Declan Doyle cut his teeth with Sean Payton, spent 1 year with Ben Johnson. Of course, he learned stuff from Ben Johnson, probably learned a lot, but I'm not with coach on that. But what makes me optimistic about the offense is just Doyle himself, the confidence that coach talked about, the detail oriented. I mean, you got Lamar Jackson in one clip. He told Lamar to get back out of the huddle and got the huddle tighter. Everybody wants everybody's eyes. Like, this is the kind of coaching you would see at the high school level to make sure everybody is, you're telling professional millionaires to get their huddle tighter, stuff that most coaches wouldn't care about. You know what I mean?
Quarter billionaires.
Quarter billion. I mean, the franchise, Lamar, just the detail oriented. And, quite frankly, I think that's what they needed. There's something about Declan Doyle, not the opposite of scared, like ultra confident, knows he's going to be something, takes his job very seriously. This is a reflection of being preparing as much as he can. The other thing that stuck out to me, and Jake probably heard me talk about this last Wednesday. I don't know if you caught this, Coach, but the coaches are calling plays against each other during voluntary OTAs. They aren't going out there with a script.
Right.
And say, all right, well, we messed it up. Run that again. We false started. Run that again. They're calling plays from Doyle to Lamar transferring that, telling the players, and putting a lot on their plate and adjusting, basically coaching against each other.
Yeah.
So Doyle was asked about his play calling experience, first time play caller. He's like, I've never been at a place where we're calling plays against each other, basically, at OTAs. So there's just so much good vibes, I would say, Coach, when it comes to how I view Declan Doyle as a coach, a personality, tough guy. He's going to want to get it right, unafraid. So I don't know what the X's and O's are going to look like. I'm not as confident as you on that, Coach, but I know that we're getting somebody who's going to be ultra detailed, going to be all over everybody, whether it's Lamar or the 53rd guy on the roster.
Couple of things I'll get. If I forget, remind me to talk about the whole Lamar, and then Doyle correcting, tightening, whatever, the huddle, if I don't come back to it. But as far as the script goes, it's interesting when I first heard that and it was so crazy because the morning of, I think I heard that like in the afternoon, like 2 or 3 p.m. That morning, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is he's going to be a first-time DC. He's been coaching for a long time, college and high school. He's going to be a first-time DC. And he was talking about 7-on-7 tournaments and in high school, 7-on-7 practices, getting ready for it. And I said, all right, well, what's your script look like for Wednesday, the following Wednesday? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, what's the offensive coordinator's script? Is he going to go 2x2? Is he going to go 3x1? What are you guys looking at so that okay, the first 7 plays are 3x1 trips. Next 7 plays are 2x2, so that you as a coach, you know what the kids should and should not be adjusting into. So that script sometimes is actually to evaluate the players in one way, from one angle. Do they know what calls we should or should not be checking into if it's 2x2 versus 3x1 or whatever? Conversely, and I'll tell you what I think, to be honest with you. I think they're just giving Doyle more experience calling plays. I think they're just opening up that window sooner to give him the opportunity to do that against Weaver and or Minter, in my opinion. That would be my impression of that, for whatever reason. It's not to say that there aren't scripted time periods. In fact, there have to be scripted time periods so that the defense can be told, hey, it's 21 personnel. This is your call. If it's 2 back, this is your call. If it's 1 back, and then this is your check. If it's motion, boom. And then you evaluate whether the defensive guys can do that in that isolated scenario. You give them 8 plays of that in a row, and your quickest kids or your quickest athletes, they're good to go on play number 1. Some kids or players catch up by play number 3. The guys who haven't caught up by play number 4, they got to go. So different the script, whether you have one or not, I think just evaluates different things. In my opinion, they're just helping out Doyle, giving him an idea, but there's probably more than that.
Yeah, mentally
Lamar,
for the players, I would say too, Coach. Like it's
100%.
more of a mental exercise. There's only so much you can do in these voluntary OTAs to begin with. So I love the fact that they're putting a lot on the players' plate, stressing them mentally, and stressing obviously giving the coaches letting them fight it out a little bit, letting them strategize against each other.
Now, as far as the make sure I understand, Doyle adjusted the huddle, made it a little tighter, a little better than what it was, right? Sometimes that is actually scripted, and I can know that from experience. Jason, it's been a couple of years. I think I told you this. Every year we would identify the kids that we knew or had an idea may not react well to certain coaching. Sometimes those kids are some of your really good players, and so now you got a problem. Athlete is very talented. They're going to be on the field during games. You need them to be coached in a high stress situation because that's going to happen in the game. So sometimes you have to simulate it or script it. And I'll tell you real quick, one of my favorite players that I ever coached, him and I butted heads when he was a 9th grade kid, threw him out of my class like 30 times because he couldn't stop saying 4-letter words. And by the time he was a sophomore on my JV defense, my favorite, already one of my favorite kids, a year later, less than a year later, maybe 6 months later, 8 months later. By the time he was a junior on our varsity team, I would go to him before class or school practice, Hey, Bert, during pursuit drill today, the second rep, I'm going to jump you like crazy. And you're not going to do anything wrong, but I'm letting everybody else know the next rep, you're going to be the one telling everybody to do things correctly. Now, of course, Doyle's not doing that with Lamar Jackson. He's not jumping all over him. But the idea is sometimes you script it and you go to the player, Doyle, Lamar. Hey, Lamar, the third rep here, I'm going to adjust this huddle for you. I want everyone to know that I'm willing to correct you and that you are willing to handle it and accept it, because that's just as important, the player's willingness to accept it. And then even, what do you call it? Mirror or follow up. Basically take the baton. Coach did the first 2 steps. I'll go the next 3. And I will tell you this, it works every time. It works every single time. I've never seen it not work, and used it for probably 10 or 12 years in a row. And what it also does is, Lamar's different. It empowers that student athlete, in my experience. It gives them, wow, he came up to me and thought highly enough of me to do this. So that could have been scripted between Lamar and Doyle. Wide receiver group. Do you guys have any anxiety the way that some people do on social media? I don't, to be honest with you. I like the group, and that's why I still have it up here. But you're, open platform. Where are you guys at with the wide receiver group? Are you excited? I am. And do you have concerns? And what are?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. I know there's a bunch of people that for years now have been, pounding the table saying we needed a wide receiver 1, we need, X, Y, and Z, I've never been that guy. I think, Lamar is a special talent, and he's progressed as a passer to the point where, anybody could be out there and he'll be productive. We can win games with him. But I think in terms of our baseline talent, Zay Flowers is a Pro Bowl wide receiver, could potentially put together an all-pro season if everything goes right. Rashad Bateman frustrates me, but when he's on, he's great. I think he's got the potential to have, 1,000 yards, a bunch of catches, but he needs to put it together week by week. So that's obviously a bit of a risk, but in terms of the depth, you've got the two new young guys coming in, and Lane and Surratt. I think they're going to see the field a lot. Devontae Walker seems to be in the mix a lot as well, based on some of these media members and relaying some of the plays that they see at practice. So we'll see what kind of jump Walker makes. Can he step into that third wide receiver role? I think he can. But, the question is, would you rather see what you have in Walker or go sign another 35-year-old receiver who's going to have 25 catches 30 catches. Is it really that important? I don't think so. But for our top two guys, I think they're really talented, and we should be good to go.
Yeah, not as optimistic. I'm a little concerned. It's just I have a lot of confidence in Zay Flowers. I think he's awesome. I think that Mark Andrews is due to hit the wall anytime now if he hasn't already. Bateman, don't know what to expect. Hopefully he can be healthy. Hopefully he can be on the same page with Lamar. Those things have been, fleeting his entire career aside from 2024. I think that Devontae Walker, love him. I think he's got a chance to have a very, very impactful year, make himself a household name. I look at the rookies. Jacoby Lane needs some development. Surratt to me is just borderline NFL athlete. He's going to have to be schemed open. He's not going to get himself open. I look at Durham Smythe as a blocking tight end. You get two rookie tight ends, so it's not like we have an Isaiah Likely there to bail us out. So I see a great player in Zay Flowers, and then a bunch of players that I have no idea what to expect from them. I think where my confidence comes from this room is in the coaching staff again. If it was the previous regime, it could be hey, this guy deserves it. This guy shows up. We need this guy to come, and just not properly evaluate what you have. I think the bright spot here is that if Declan Doyle goes to Coach Minter goes to EDC and be like, look, we don't have enough. I need at least somebody, just somebody to stabilize this room. He doesn't have to be an all-pro, but somebody that I can depend on because this guy's not ready. This guy's not picking it up fast enough. This guy can't run these types of routes that I need somebody else to run, that they will address that. But, my confidence level in anybody not named Zay Flowers is not very high. I couldn't tell you who's going to be second in the team in targets. You would think it would be Mark Andrews, of course. But yeah, I just don't know. I think Lane is going to take a minute to develop. I think he's going to be a very good player in this league. I love Devontae Walker. I don't know. Someone on my channel brought up if they bring in anybody, they would like it to be D-Hop because D-Hop would actually know his role and accept his role. So you could let these young guys play in training camp, let these guys practice in training camp, and then just have D-Hop there when needed, where you're not paying them a lot of money and taking targets away from these young guys, which wouldn't be a bad idea to me either.
I like that we have guys on different developmental starting points, paths. Big fan of Surratt and the toughness and the production. Everywhere he's gone. So crazy that he went to St. Francis High School and then went to St. Francis College and then James Madison in Indiana. But I'm glad that we have Bateman at the salary we have. I'll be honest with you, I'm a Rashad Bateman fan. Been rooting for him for years. I think that's pretty much where all of us are. I'm glad we have him at a certain salary standpoint that is, well, to be honest with you, from 2025, it's not commensurate. It doesn't line up. We didn't get what we paid for, right? In 2025, we didn't, I don't think. So I'm glad that there's a cap on the salary there for Bateman because we could get more. It would be great if we got something closer to 2024. I think some of it is systemic. And so I'll use the Rams as an example, and this is an unpopular opinion, but a lot of the ways their guys get open, Puka Nacua will be one of them, is organized for them. It's designed. It's part of the concept. Now, it doesn't mean that Nacua and the ex receiver for them, Devontae Adams, aren't winning individually. They certainly are. But they do a great job of finding ways to get those guys open, especially under center, and through the use of motion. So I'm glad we have guys on a different developmental track. Two rookies, Walker's in his third year, right?
Third year. I would just say none of them have played though.
Yeah.
Zay Flowers and Bateman have played. Andrews has played. Nobody else on the team has played.
I could see Walker giving us 20, 22 catches, 5 of which being touchdowns, playing kind of that early for the Bears last year, that early season Luther Burden role. But let's be honest, as much as the names were there for those guys in Chicago last year, I know that's where Doyle was the offensive coordinator, even though he didn't call plays. DJ Moore is a high volume guy and not great yards per catch. And a lot of his stuff is schemed open. Even though DJ Moore's from Maryland, and I'm a fan of his, seeing him succeed, he's moved around a lot, number one. Number two, very selfish guy that doesn't block a whole lot and doesn't show up on the backside of plays. I wouldn't want him on my team. I'll be completely honest with you. The other guy that they have at receiver there, super inefficient as well from a targets to catch standpoint. So I think that even though I know everybody we would take Luther Burden on this team immediately, and he would play a ton of snaps for this team. I think all three of us are a huge fan of Luther Burden a year ago or a year and a half ago in that draft process. So this doesn't mean anything to him at all. But the other two guys, DJ Moore, who's gone, I wouldn't want him on this roster. The other receiver, the big tall guy, 6'3", 6'4", I forget his last name for a moment here. I mean, of course we would take him, and of course we would take Burden. I guess what I'm saying is I think we have enough to make this work, but it wouldn't surprise me if at some point, whether it was trade deadline, or training camp, if they did, Hopkins or someone like that, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I like that we've got 6 guys here that are fighting, to get on the field. I do like that. I don't see anyone underneath that group of 6.
My question to you,
doing
Coach, would
anything
be,
other than preseason at all.
Zay's going to need – he's not going to play 100% of the snaps. He's going to need a water break at least. God forbid he misses extended time. Who's the Z receiver? I mean, the only other guy I think that has a chance to do that is Rashad Bateman. Your high volume, right side of the field, working in tandem with the tight end. The rest of them look like big slots, X receivers to me, which is usually backwards. Usually you have a bunch of guys who can play Z, and nobody's built to play X. But like Zay
a lot of
Flowers,
the NFL receiver alignment is backwards now. A lot of it has been switched. No, they're absolutely right. I mean, we have to hope Flowers stays healthy, first of all. I think they're going to use these other guys. I look at Burden last year, his first year in Chicago, to acquire what is needed and be ready to play in a Ben Johnson offense, terminology-wise and adjustment-wise, it's a high standard. Surratt is ready for that as far as a preparedness standpoint, certainly, with what they did in Indiana. Ben Johnson did a lot of things in Detroit, can presume he did in Chicago, and we know Bieniemy did as well. That's on the quarterback. Here's these 2 plays that I'm calling. However, if they ever give us this look on 3rd and 8, these other options, you as a quarterback have to be ready. There was a video that came out 2 or 3 days ago about NFL quarterbacks not audibly now. I understand why the person put that out, and I get it. But Ben Johnson, Doyle, if he runs what Ben Johnson did, is going to give Lamar the opportunity to do so. Basically, I think we have to have, be prepared for wide receivers beyond Bateman and Flowers who might not be ready for that, other than Surratt. Surratt will be a little adjustable because of, where he played. But
I think
I like the group.
Yeah, Jason brought up a good point earlier. I think my confidence level is high because of the potential and the projections based on what the staff can do with these guys. But also, to argue against that point, you're right. If Zay Flowers goes down, who is the guy? That's a big concern I didn't really factor in. But yeah, I think, like you said, Coach, there's enough there right now. We hope that these guys, some of the depth guys, Walker, Surratt, and Lane, even LeJontay Wester, if he can get on the field, we hope that their production level rises. But yeah, it wouldn't hurt them to add one more reliable pass catcher.
We're not seeing press man that often in the NFL anyway. It's not the same type of press man that you saw 14 years ago or even 10 years ago. So some of that is rules based, but a lot of it is defense is trying to retain their projection of the umbrella being really wide, meaning it could be this coverage, it could be that coverage, it could be that coverage. And press man kind of takes some of that away. You can press bail, of course, to different things. I guess what I'm saying is I'm less concerned about the X being able to be open in this offense because I think a lot of it's going to be prescripted designed. If
Yeah,
you will.
especially with Lamar. Lamar, you definitely don't want to play man defense against him. But yeah, I mean, we will face man. Teams may want to dial up the blitz against Lamar. They don't think these guys can beat him, and that could be an answer that comes through for him. If we don't have guys who can get off the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I mean, we have plenty of talent. I think Durham Smythe is going to be a key piece to this, Coach.
Absolutely.
Like you were saying, the adjustments and the ability to audible, and just a glue piece. So I love having him on the team. But
They know
yeah,
what they're going to get there. They know what they're going to get. Right.
yeah, and he's obviously going to wear a lot of hats from the different types of blocks he's going to execute. They're going to be able to line him up in different spots. So he really helps them from that standpoint.
You guys okay if we move on to the defensive side? Pushing the pace here a little bit. Leading into mandatory camp, we still don't have an answer on Matabike, so we'll operate here that we're going to get something closer to 2024 from Matabike, hopefully from a production and availability standpoint. But who knows, right? I think we do know this: the level of preparedness, the game planning that we're going to have with Minter and Weaver on staff it's just totally different. It's 2 levels above what we had the last 2 years, in my opinion. It's maybe even 3, let alone play calling that Jesse Minter will be able to give, or try to do a lot of things that Minter, McDonald try to do. He just didn't do them at the right time and didn't coach the players in practice to recognize things as well as quickly and get to the spot, because at the NFL level, things happen fast. Where are you guys? Which group do you feel most confident in? And I'm going to be specific. Which aspect of the defense do you feel most confident in? Our nickel base, 4-2-5 base, the pass coverage, basically corners, safeties, and or the pass rush. Which of those 3 do you feel most confident in? Which of those 3 do you have the most questions about?
Well, I mean, I have confidence in the whole defense. Our base nickel, I think, is going to be really strong. Excuse me, because of the addition to Jalen Hawkins. You see Kyle Hamilton in that strong safety spot. You see Marlon Humphrey as their nickel back. That's not going to be the case. Kyle is going to play close to the line of scrimmage. He's going to be at nickel. Have Jalen Hawkins, Malachi Starks back there. I expect improvement from Starks. He'll be put in more of a playmaking role, I believe, closer to the line of scrimmage, manning up on tight ends. His tackling was excellent. So I think it's just I don't have any kind of knock on this defense as far as I think we're going to struggle with this, that, or another. I think the upside here is huge for this defense. I think the talent is there. The talent compared to what's been on the LA Chargers the last 2 years. Ravens are a much more talented team. In addition, you have Weaver, who specializes. They're both good defensive coordinators, but Weaver specializes in the guys up front. Minter is a specialist in the secondary. You're getting in-depth coaching from 2 defensive coordinator level guys. Love the Mike Mickens hire. Love the addition of Trey Hendrickson. That really just sets the whole thing off. I would say my major question is just Nnamdi, where he's at. Even if he's back, is he really back? Is he back to his old self, or is he limited in some form or fashion? But that's where the Calais Campbell signing, I think, really feels good. It was needed, and that'll really help us out this year. But borderline cocky when it comes to this defense.
Yeah, I'm excited about the defense as a whole, but a couple of things that I'm looking forward to watching, especially this preseason and camp season 1, and this is kind of boring, but I'm excited to see how this cornerback depth room ends up. Coach, I was a big fan of Cone out of college. Longerbeam was apparently a Red Star guy from the Raven Scouts. So 2 young guys coming off serious injuries, so that's obviously a factor there. But if they're able to continue their development as corners, that would provide the Ravens another pair of really solid depth players with pretty high upside, I think, for both of them. But you have Tampa, Rivers, Missing one more. Awuzie as the third corner there. So that I'm looking forward to seeing that battle shake out. And then the second thing is the pass rush. If we're going to see more of what we saw back in 23, 24 with, stunts, letting your pass rushers just rush the passer. There were so many times over the past couple of years where it seemed like our edge guys were just there to contain, not really doing anything, just grabbing a guy and staying there. It's going to benefit Mike Green. It's going to benefit the guys in the interior, Trey Hendrickson, obviously. So I'm really excited to see them play and get after the quarterback.
I really love the group that we have, out there on the edge. And to an extent, there will be times where, if Matabike is healthy, if he's back to being able to play a lot of snaps, there'll be times where Calais Campbell is out there, even at his age. It showed up in the Arizona film last year. I don't know about you guys, but I got to like the third quarter of the first game I watched, and I was like, wow, he's still a really good player. I was kind of blown away. And in fact, there was 2 games I watched where we used to do this as high school coaches. You'd watch a game, maybe go scout a team, and you leave driving home and you say, who's the best player on the field? And there was a couple of games I watched last year with Calais Campbell. He would have been in the discussion. I wouldn't have said he was the best player on the field, but he was possibly the most impactful at times. So I do like the edge group. I wasn't as big of an advocate for drafting Zion Young as other players going into the draft, but where we got him at 45, A+ pick for me.
Great value.
Because of the athleticism, the violence. That's one thing that we added 2 guys here, Zion Young, and it goes a little bit under the radar with Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson is like he's a pain. He's a pain to play against, and he lets you know about it. And so I'm a big fan of 2 of the guys that we brought in here, Zion Young and Trey Hendrickson, from the standpoint of how they play the game and the type of mentality that they bring competitors. You can see it, not just in the talking or whatever, but you can see it when they play during the snap. They're very violent with their hands. I will say this as far as the pass rush goes. I think it's about more than just letting the edge rushers go. I would agree with what you said, Jake. I think it's the design element of it. And it's a dynamic that I haven't been able to finalize my thoughts on with what Seattle does. And I'll try to here briefly. From a 4-man rush scheme, there were a lot of Seattle Seahawks rushes this past year where one edge defender you're on an outside rush path. It's whatever your best move is to the outside. But the other 3 guys were doing something that was designed or scripted based upon the look they gave pre-snap. And we just couldn't get anywhere near that level of organization last year. I'm not capable of understanding it all and explaining it all, but I'm letting you know there's something there. And I think we have the ability to do that with Weaver and Minter now, and basically generate another 3, 4, 5, 6 sacks over the course of the season because of the design of the pass rush scheme, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And, I think you extend that to knowing where the ball is going to have to go, knowing where the quarterback is going to have to go with the ball based on how you're rushing them, based on how you're covering, based on what he saw pre-snap. All of that goes together. And I think that, the main principle of a Jesse Minter defense, same as a Mike McDonald defense, is just extra. It's not too fancy. It's not too overcomplicated. It's a communicative defense where everybody knows what the other guy is doing and all eyes are on the ball, extra prepared. You know where it's going to go. So, yeah, I mean, you can tell Trey Hendrickson, you can tell Mike Green that they're going to burn the outside edge and, chase that quarterback down. You can have Trenton Simpson crashing on the first thing out of town from the linebacker spot. And really just be able to smother the quarterback before he even gets started. I had even heard that those guys up in Seattle, kind of called their own audibles in real time with the rush. Hey, look, they're setting up this way. The formation's this way. We're going to have to stunt. This guy's having problems with this. This guy's having problems with that. Run a game on one side, play it straight on the other side. And again, anticipate where the quarterback's going to have to roll or if he's going to have to step up, even not even side to side. So I just going from at times it felt like we didn't practice on defense over the last 2 years to a defense whose principle is organization. That's the name of the game. That's what they're built on. Wink Martindale, Rex Ryan was built on organized chaos. This is about communication. This is about the details, and this is about eyes on the ball, rally to the ball. It's going to be night and day difference again. I'm just really high on this defense. I saw what Minter did in LA with who he had, and that's been documented. I talk about it all the time on my channel, and I look at some of the names on this defense, and he's going to be very blessed to work with these guys.
I love the options we have when we go. Well, we're going to be a nickel base. We know that, but I love the options we have at the nickel position specifically, because it could, generally it will be Kyle Hamilton, like one of you guys said earlier. But in certain coverages, it could be Marlon Humphrey. ESPN accidentally got it right here. It could be, depending on how well Chandler Rivers, works out here. I like Chandler Rivers at outside corner better than other people talked about. Hawkins is not a man coverage guy, in my opinion, overall, but I think he's really good everywhere you put him. And Starks is another one that could drop down there. I like what we've got if and when we go dime. And I think that may be a necessity. That'll be one of the things I bring up here at the end. My question marks will be the will linebacker position. I just finished looking at how 3 different teams attacked the Chargers and the Dolphins last year. And I knew by the third game that I watched, I was like, let me guess. 8 of the first 10 plays are going to be into the boundary. Sure enough, that's where they went. It was like clockwork, and we have why? The Chargers have Derwin James. He's the dedicated nickel. We have Kyle Hamilton. Well, wouldn't you, as an offensive coordinator, say, hey, maybe I should avoid those guys as much as possible? Yeah, you would. And so I think we can kind of project where things are going to go at times, depending on, formation and personnel group. But that will linebacker position is going to be under stress. Trenton Simpson and Buchanan, if and whenever he comes back, those guys are going to be stressed. And that to me is more than the pass rush, more than the coverage, more than anything else. That spot to me, along with Matabike, is the biggest question mark I have. And in fact, for me, the whole team, the whole roster, center on offense, will linebacker on defense is pretty much where I am having question marks.
With you on that.
Yeah, I agree. Center, linebacker, and then obviously, we talked about the wide receiver room. Is that enough? Those are the 3 question marks I'd have.
What struck me the most was the Colts film. The Colts, week 1 against the Dolphins, and then week 7 against the Chargers. Just saw them going after the will linebacker for both of those defenses repeatedly. And a lot going on, or a lot to talk about that. I loved some of the things that McDonald too. Weaver, not so much. I didn't see Weaver dropping the boundary side edge defender that much. It just didn't show up in the games that I watched. McDonald and Minter do that a little bit more often. Interestingly, though, once Owe showed up to LA, I didn't see him dropping nearly as much with the Chargers. It just didn't show up for me on film when Owe was on the field. Other guys, it was there. And so, I think it's a question mark for this defense. How often are we going to have to allocate a boundary side edge rusher to drop out in coverage and, quote, confuse the quarterback, because our base guys out there, Buchanan and Simpson, both have their own issues in pass coverage. There are different issues between those 2 guys. Consistency, Simpson, actual technical pass drops for Buchanan. So they're different issues. But we've got that, to me, would be the place that I would expect NFL defenses to try to attack. But if it's 3rd and 6, kind of doesn't matter, right? If we stop the run on early downs, then eventually, we're going to win the battle of attrition over the course of a possession, a game, in the season if we put you in a whole bunch of 3rd and 6s with the guys we've got. So
especially if we commit more to the dime. I mean, you talked about those slot corners. I mean, we have too many. We have too many at this point. They're not all going to make the team. Rivers is going to make the team because he was just drafted. I think Keon and Longerbeam are going to be fighting for a spot because you can't have three guys on the team that can only play three DBs who can only play one spot when Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey are already in front of those guys. So yeah, maybe we commit more to dime, and instead of it being Trenton Simpson or Teddy Buchanan, we just go more Kyle Hamilton heavy. We saw Wouzier in that role a little bit last year in that dime linebacker spot. So yeah, that could be another solution is to just turn more dime heavy.
Makes what I've watched from the Ravens system, the Chargers system, and the Seahawks system, Hamilton, Derwin James, Amanwari in Seattle, they have the same role. I mean, they really, really do. It's a dedicated nickel on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 8 or whatever, and then oftentimes playing the dime linebacker into the boundary. And I love the fact that we have a defensive play caller, head coach, Minter, who just walked away from Derwin James, and now he's got Kyle Hamilton. He's familiar with the dynamic of where's Waldo. Basically, Hamilton's over there. We're going to run this concept over here. Hamilton's over there. We're going to run this concept over here. I'm a big fan of the unpredictability of personnel deployment on offense, but I think there's something to be said defensively as well about using as many of those corners as possible that are ready to contribute, and giving different defensive looks. I guess for you guys, do you have any specific concerns about a player on defense, or a position or a player on defense?
I guess my biggest questions / concerns are with some of the older veteran guys. Is Roquan going to bounce back, or is this the guy that we're going to see for, the next year if he's still on the team next year? And then Marlon, is he going to bounce back and get back to? We talked about it in the Discord, I think, the other day, but we're a year and a half removed from him being an all-pro corner. Can he get back into that? Not even all-pro, just get to a quality starter level. That's going to help the defense significantly too. But yeah, those would be my two biggest questions.
Yeah, my second question, Coach, is that other safety spot. So, we have the luxury on this team. You mentioned it, Coach. Jalen Hawkins, I expect to be playing more of your quote unquote free safety role, with Malachi Starks being the action man. You can put in the box if you want 8 men in the box. That'll be Malachi Starks. You want a man up on the tight end. That'll be Malachi Starks. But the beauty of Malachi is if something happens to Jalen Hawkins, you can move Malachi Starks, can roam center field for you, which is the hardest thing to find in the NFL, is a true center fielder. Something happened to both of those guys. We saw Kyle Hamilton roam center field. So we're good when it comes to your quote unquote free safeties. Keandre Jackson, I think, is an important player to this team because of how good he is on special teams, because he's under a contract which is very friendly to the Ravens for the next few years. But what I don't want to see happen is Kyle Hamilton to come out of that role as your Derwin James, as your Nicky Wimwari. Like Zach Orr and John Harbaugh, for some reason, went into last year planning him to be. I mean, he was your strong safety when we went into last. And Marlon's my nickel corner. And that's the way John Harbaugh and Zach Orr played it. I don't want Kyle to have to babysit the back end or even play more strong safety than he has to. So, one injury occurs to either Starks or Hawkins. The other guy is going to have to play free safety. I don't want Kyle back there at safety. Keandre Jackson as that backup safety. That's a guy I'm looking at. They brought in Kayvon Wallace. I'm rooting for Keandre, though, to step up and do big things. And last week in OTAs, we got reports that Keandre had an interception and almost had another one. But obviously the linebacker spot, Coach, jumps out to me. This is more of a tertiary type concern, would be just to have somebody else back there. I almost wonder if that's something that TJ Tampa, maybe can cross train and get some reps back there just in case, worst case scenario. Just say, hey, look, TJ, we like you at right corner to press, X receivers when we need. Just learn that. and learn strong safety and have that be his 2 spots, because we saw him do it all at Iowa State, and a tremendously smart player in TJ Tampa.
Yeah, really good film there. I thought I really enjoyed his film. What's unique here in some ways? Well, nobody plays in the preseason, right? They don't play starters, but young guys play, and you get an idea of what they can and can't do. We're not going to get any answer at all in the preseason about the will linebacker spot. None. Between 2 young guys, Buchanan is in his 2nd year. Simpson's in his 4th. Is that right?
This is it. This is it for Trent. Yep.
Yeah. It did surprise me a little bit that they did, given Buchanan's injury. We don't know what this current defensive staff thinks of Buchanan, whether they hold the same beliefs as Harbaugh and Orr and those guys. It did surprise me a little bit that we didn't hear something about a veteran will linebacker. Alex Anzalone was one that I wondered about for the Lions. A will linebacker, plays a lot of man coverage. In fact, plays too much man coverage. He's gone to Tampa Bay to take a legends, an absolute legends, spot there as the will linebacker. So I'm wondering about, cuts or guys who are available, veterans later, because to me, Buchanan's the question marks about his injury, and then Simpson inconsistency. We're not going to know as fans at all, where we are with that position until the regular season. We pretty much know where we got everywhere else except for Matabike. Would you have ever guessed that we'd be here a year ago? Like a year ago this time, could you have ever said, hey, we're going to have a new head coach, first-year head coach. Anthony Weaver is going to be the defensive coordinator, and a first-year play caller who's, what is he, 14 months older than Lamar?
No, I think he just turned 30. I think he's –
okay.
I think it's within a year, right, Jake?
Within a year.
Yeah.
So maybe 10 months. Okay.
So.
Could you have ever guessed that we'd be where we are? I couldn't have, even as negative as I was about some of the things we saw with the staff in 2024. And I know I was an outlier talking about those things in the offseason. I don't think I ever could have guessed that we'd be here where we are. So,
I mean, Coach, even from when you were on my channel during the bye week, I wouldn't have thought that Bisciotti and
right
had the you know what's to do it. I really didn't. I thought they were just going to let him keep getting away with how he was coaching the team and playing favorites, and it's more about me doing it my way than it is doing what's best for the team. I mean, I had to be honest. When players move on, I root for them. Absolutely. I want our guys to do well.
Absolutely.
Even Geno Stone, we're okay when we play him. Obviously, I don't want him to have a good game, but I like what Geno did for us. He worked hard, came up big for us when we needed him in 2023. And I couldn't have imagined a scenario as of even a couple of years ago where I wouldn't want John Harbaugh to do well at his new spot. And I got to be honest, man, if I'm being completely honest, I hope it crashes and burns in New York about as hard as it can be with what that he did to Lamar the last couple of years in this franchise and how he handled things and how I believe he put himself over the 53 guys on the roster by trying to prove a point that he was right and his way is the right way. So it's very rare for me to feel like kind of vindictive, Now I feel like I've outgrown a lot, but yeah,
no,
man.
I'm tracking. Tracking. You find yourself with 30% of your thought patterns thinking that, which you just described, and the other 70% or whatever saying, all right, well, I'm not going to waste my time with it. Neither of us is going to actively root against the New York Giants.
Or thank you for everything you've done, John Harbaugh.
Right,
you did some great things here, and that's usually where I come from.
Yeah, but neither of us is going to be surprised if it's week 8 and some of the same things show up in New York that showed up here. Unfortunately, you don't want to ever ruin someone's excitement. I remember after they hired him, so many Giants fans were on my timeline like, hey, could you do a video on this? Or sending me messages, could you do a video on this? And I politely declined each time. Like, I don't think I'm the guy you want talking about John Harbaugh and what you're going to get in New York. I don't think that's me.
Could you imagine that New York media if they get off to a slow start?
Yeah.
Oh, my
different story.
goodness.
This isn't Baltimore.
Nope.
This is not Baltimore out there.
Because John's always been great with the media. Very transparent guy.
I like what we have as far as you actually were the one who brought that up earlier, the transparency. You can see it. I will say this. Todd Monken's a straight shooter.
Oh, I
And
love
that
Todd.
that to me stood out in the last couple of years. And that's kind of where I'm going to go with this here at the end is I feel like we've got two, maybe three guys. Well, I suspect that Doyle might be the only guy, maybe Ledford, who are willing to go where Todd's going to go with it. But I think the other guys are going to be direct, and I think they're going to be forthright about what we're getting. I know the schedule is different near the end of the season, but in reality, we got a great opportunity to get off to a good start here in
Absolutely.
2026, in my opinion. It's
Absolutely. Yeah,
different than some other schedules.
I think this staff is getting these guys, getting our team ready and as prepared as possible. And like you said, the transparency. It seems like they're not only transparent on the field, but even off the field too. Like the relationship between Minter, Doyle, and Lamar just has a much different feel. Like we were left in the dark so many times with Harbaugh and Lamar, what that relationship was like, where is he like during the offseason. It seems like the communication's great there. And if he's happy, everybody else on the team's happy. So
I don't know about
it's a
you
good
guys,
thing.
but I know I'm excited about what we got coming up, mandatory minicamp. And then when the training camp stuff is announced and then the tickets go on sale, I'll be doing, or not sale, but when they're out there to sign up for, I'll be doing the same thing I do every year, just hoping that I can get one. It never happens. They're always gone gone in 19 seconds. But man, thank you guys for coming on. This has been, I would like to do it again after mandatory minicamp. If you got, the next 2 or 3 weeks, if you guys are available for something like this, would love to talk about what we saw, what we heard, and then also get into some of the draft stuff that we discussed, before the show.
Let's do it. Hey, and I think that going back to the draft, I think we did a good job addressing our needs. We just had a lot of them. But the only pick that seemed out of place was again Chandler Rivers. When I was confident that Kyle was going to play nickel. Knew Marlon had that ability. Keon looked pretty good. You had Longer Beam coming back, a Red Star
Right.
guy. So it was like Chandler Rivers just was the best player available. They must have loved him.
Super.
We could have taken a linebacker there, Coach. We could have taken a fourth safety there with that pick. We didn't. Maybe there's another pick that I'm missing, but that was I feel like we did a good job addressing the needs this offseason to put us in a good position, and just loving the new energy of the coaching staff. And when this mandatory minicamp ramps up next week, I feel like it's because they have like some stipulations, and I've seen the stipulations, and maybe you would be able to decipher them better than I would, Coach. But it's not like they're going full plaids 11 on 11.
Oh, right.
But this mandatory minicamp, you're allowed to do more than you are at the voluntary OTAs, which are like deemed workouts. The OTAs are more like workouts. So I want to see, the video footage, who's catching the passes, who's getting the interceptions, who would have got to the quarterback, and just allow myself to get caught up in that off-season hype and enjoy it.
And it start Tuesday, right? The 9th.
I think it's the 9th through the 11th. Yep.
I think Monday is going to be cool in the area, but I think Tuesday, Wednesday is pretty warm, and then I think Thursday is like a rainout, a washout. So I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work as far as heat acclimatization, because you never know about guys who've been there. You're aware of what they've been doing. Guys who haven't at all, you got to try to triage them. Okay, what have you been doing? How long? How much have you been working out, etc.
Yeah, could be worse. They could be European soccer players dying in the heat here in June. Could be worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, you guys, thank you again for joining me on this, and trying to always get better with the process of what produce here on the channel that's non-film related. I'm slowly coming around to the idea, Jake, of doing a little more stuff during the season that doesn't include film.
There you go.
Yeah.
Probably because of the headache and how much the process that I have to go through to actually launder the film and be able to show it on YouTube. So, but in any case, man, appreciate you guys' time. If you guys check this video out, you can feedback brutally honest about, what we try to talk about this evening, what we missed, and what we could cover again in the second installation of this. So if you guys appreciated the video, if you enjoyed the video, please let us know in the comment section, number one. And then finally, if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy what we produced here in a little over an hour and 20 minutes, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach. Appreciate you guys' time.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.